Good afternoon, students and all participants.
Good afternoon. Dr. Crystal, I think you have met before, probably with Professor Agustina. She is the head department of our pharmacology department here.
Hello, Dr. Crystal. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Doctor. Nice to meet you
Hello.
also virtually, although it's virtually. Hope to see you in person,
I'm
Doctor.
sorry, I thought you were one of my students because your face is so young and I thank you.
So happy to
Thank you
hear
for
that.
yes, yes. Okay. To the committee, to the panitia, today the Vice Dean of Academic will open the guest lecture, but we still wait for him. Okay.
Uh, I'm sorry, Prof,
Yes.
but can we still start on time? The
Yes.
Vice Dean will come on time, right?
Yes.
Yes,
He
just
said yes.
for
He said
confirmation, I guess.
yes. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Mm,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prof.
yes.
To Professor Tina, Dr. Hewan Anta, and Dr. Clester Joe, let me start today's session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Vice Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, Professor Dr. Hewan Agung Budianto, MP, PhD, the Honorable Head of the Department of Pharmacology, Professor Dr. Hewan Agustina Dwi Wijayanti, MP, esteemed lecturers and staff of the Department of Pharmacology, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Welcome to today's special lecture with the topic Ethno-Veterinary Medicine and Toxicology, hosted by the Department of Pharmacology, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. It is truly an honor to have all of you here as we gather for an enlightening session featuring our distinguished guests from College of Veterinary Medicine, Tarlac Agricultural University, Philippines. My name is Ayu, and I will be your master of ceremony today. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me first to read the agenda for today. The first agenda is the opening session, and second is the presentation and Q&A session led by our moderator, followed by the final agenda, the closing agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, Okay, now to officially commence today's event, let us first hear a few opening remarks from Vice Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Profesor Dr. Hewan Agung Budianto, MP, PhD. Please welcome Profesor Dr. Hewan Agung Budianto, MP, PhD.
Okay, I off the camera, yeah, because I'm still on the street. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for this moment. And first of all, I would like thank you very much for the Department of Pharmacology that is already make this general lecture or visiting lecture, and I hope this program will be increasing the experiences and also share all the knowledge about the pharmacology knowledge in Gadjah Mada University, especially at Faculty of Veterinary Science. Thank you very much for the speakers today. Thank you very much. You have the time for us, and I know you are very busy today, and also they have many agenda. So first of all, I'm behalf of the Faculty of Veterinary Science, Veterinary Faculty Medicine, Gadjah Mada University. I would like to thank you very much, Professor, and I hope this seminar or this general lecture not only stop in here, but we will continue by continuing by the other activities. And I hope the Department of Pharmacology also will continue this program, not only for the general lecture, maybe in the research collaboration, maybe in the community services collaboration, and many academic collaboration. And hopefully not stop only now, and the faculty will be support all their activities, not only in Gadjah Mada University, maybe in level of the university. Thank you very much. And then with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the general lecture for the Department of Pharmacology today and will be open. I hope you will enjoy this talk. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you so much, Professor Agung, for the warm and motivational speech that you gave to us. Before we begin, we kindly ask all participants to turn on their cameras to conduct a brief documentation session. If possible, please use the designated virtual background for today's event. We will wait for everyone to get ready and turn on the cameras for 3 minutes. The documentation session will start at 1:16 p.m. Okay, thank you everyone for your wonderful cooperation. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Before we commence our second agenda, I would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Hewan Antasiswa Windraning Tias Rosetia Dewi MSc, who is equally outstanding as our speakers. Dr. Hewan Antasiswa Windraning Tias Rosetia Dewi MSc is one of the lecturers in the Department of Pharmacology, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. She completed his undergraduate and professional education at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and then pursued postgraduate studies at the Royal Veterinary College, University of London. specializing in wild animal health. Dr. Hewan Antasiswa has made significant contribution to the field of animal health through research. Dr. Hewan Antasiswa conducted research titled Eksplorasi Potensi Ekstrak Buah Duet Syzygium cumini untuk terapi glaukoma secara eksperimental in 2024. Eksplorasi mekanisme centella asiatica dalam terapi retinopati diabetik dengan kombinasi network pharmacology melalui docking molekuler dan eksperimental in 2023. Potensi ekoenzim sebagai obat alami untuk kesembuhan luka operasi in 2022, keragaman fitokimia, aktivitas antioksidan, dan aktivitas antibakteri 9 spesies tanaman beracun pada ternak yang tumbuh di Bojonegoro, Jawa Timur in 2021. And pengembangan metode uji kadar, sediaan serbuk imbuhan pakan, dan antibiotik secara high performance liquid chromatography in 2020. She has also published several scientific articles with the titles The Comparison of Some General Anesthetic Preparation in Cat Orchiectomy Based on the Onset and Duration of Anesthesia in 2024, a recent update on the use of antimicrobials for animal health in Yogyakarta, Indonesia in 2023, and many more. Now, without further ado, to guide us through an insightful discussion, I am pleased to hand over the session to our esteemed moderator, Dr. Hewan Antasiswa Windraningtyas Prasetyadewi, MSc.
Thank you, Ayu, as our MC. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our lecture today. This is a special one that is conducted by Department of Pharmacology. So, first of all, echoing what's being said by our Vice Dean, please allow me to extend our warmest regards to our distinguished lecturer. We are super excited to have you here with us and to learn a lot from you. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Presto. So let us take some moment or some time. Allow me to read the curriculum vitae of Dr. Presto. So Dr. Presto Joy Isla was born in Santa Ignacia Tarlac, the Philippines on September 25th, 1986. And currently, she is a veterinarian as well as a college instructor, which the status as a permanent staff as assistant professor 1. She is also being tasked at the veterinary teaching hospital. Dr. Isla completed her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from Tarlac College of Agriculture in 2009. And after that, she continued her degree in Diploma in International Health and completed it from the UP Open University, UPLB, in 2019. And then in 2021, she completed Master of International Health also from the UP Open University, UPLB. Dr. Isra has attended a wide range of seminars and conferences across Asia, and she has been also actively involved in various professional organizations such as the Philippine Veterinary Medical Association and Philippine Association of Veterinary Medicine Educators and Schools. Dr. Isla actually has been involved in or attended many of her works and presented them in various seminars and workshops, and among them are such as the efficacy of different herbal lotions against mange of dogs that she presented at Tarlac Agricultural University. And then she also presented about the efficiency of pineapple fibers as an alternative of non-absorbable suture material in surgical wounds in cats that she presented at the Brawijaya University. And then she also once presented on antibiotic sensitivity profiles of foodborne pathogens isolated from shrimp in Santa Ignacia Tarlac, Philippines, that she presented at the Universitas of Gadjah Mada, Indonesia in 2022. So I think without further ado, I think it is time for us to hand the time to Dr. Crystal. So now time is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Anta. Can you hear me clear?
Yes, clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And good afternoon, everyone, especially to all the officials of the Universitas Gadjah Mada, the Dean, the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, all the faculty members, the students, participants, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I'm not expecting to have this large volume of participants for this online lecture. I thought it's a small number, but again, I'm so thankful and grateful for inviting me. Thank you so much for inviting me as your lecturer today. So can I share my screen? Because it says here that I cannot share my screen. Sharing is not turned on.
Maybe you can recheck,
Okay, Doc.
Doctor.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that okay, right?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Where is it? All right. All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so grateful and thankful for this opportunity. And I'm so happy, even though we are all in Zoom meeting, I'm so happy to see you all virtually and hoping that one day I can see you in person here in the Philippines or there in UGM. Yeah, so this afternoon, I would like to share some insights about the ethnobotanical preparations for animals. So although we have different preparations, so I would like to share some. And those some preparations are commonly prepared here in the Philippines. So first question is, what is ethnobotanical preparations so maybe the students already know about this one. So ethnobotanical preparations, this is the traditional way. So it's a traditional way of making medicines and remedies that help maintain animals' health by giving them medicinal plants in the form of ointments, fluids, juices, lotion, and other preparations. So ethnobotany refers to the study of how. So how different cultures use plants and plant-derived substances for medicinal, nutritional, and cultural purposes. So when it comes to ethnobotanical preparations in animals, the focus is on how the indigenous and traditional knowledge systems utilize plants for veterinary care, for animal husbandry, and other animal-related practices. So ethnobotanical knowledge regarding animal care is very important. Why? It's because of the rising antimicrobial resistance we are facing right now. So it's very important to introduce a new alternative for those medicines to help our animals to treat diseases. So herbs, we have different plants, just like the herbs, have been widely used globally as an alternative medicine, especially in rural areas where there's difficulty in accessing prescribed medicine. So here in the Philippines, we have rural areas. So one of their problems of the owners, of the animal owners, is the accessibility of commercial medicines. That's why it's very important to introduce to them what all the alternatives medicines to be given to our animals. So aside, a lot of literature and studies shows that herbs are effective in treating illnesses. So as you can see in the introduction earlier, that one of the papers that I have presented, or one of the researches that we have conducted, is the use of lotion from different plants. And aside from its accessible in the locality medicinal herbs, these plants are affordable with fewer side effects. But so in spite of intensive studies, so we have many researchers, we have many studies about these plants, there are still many species of plants that are less explored. Am I right? So we have different plants in our environment, but those plants are less explored. So what are the importance of ethnobotanical preparation? So why do we need to do these preparations? Why do we need to have this ethnobotanical, since we have already done one? So first one, the one importance is the traditional veterinary care. So in many indigenous cultures, animals are treated with plant-based medicines for a range of ailments, from digestive issues to infections, joint problems, and skin condition. So we are so grateful that our indigenous people here in the Philippines, so they have a lot of plants there. So if there's a problem with their animals, or even in human, so they have a lot of plants to prepare for those diseases. And preparation, herbal remedies, and plant-based poultices have been passed down through generations and can often provide alternatives to synthetic pharmaceuticals. So especially in areas where modern veterinary care may be inaccessible. So again, this herbal medicines is a traditional way on giving medicines to our animals, especially when there is a inaccessibility of commercial ones. The second importance is the sustainability and biodiversity. The ethnobotanical knowledge encourages the use of local available. So when our students are going to after thesis, the researches about this ethnobotanical, so we are always recommend to have the plants that are locally available, locally found in our environment. So the plants must be natural plants which can be harvested sustainably, ensuring a smaller environmental footprint. So we don't want to damage our environment, so it must be naturally grown plants and can be harvested sustainably. So the knowledge of plants used in animal care can thus be contribute to conservation efforts by promoting the preservation of both plant species and the habitats they grow in. So just like what I have said, so in using the ethnobotanical medicine, so we don't want to damage our environment. So it's sustainable and biodiversity conservation. So the third importance of having this ethnobotanical purpose is the cost effectiveness. All right, so we all know that commercial medicines are very much expensive. So we are looking for the cost-effective medicines, alternative medicines. So this medical preparation of affordable than the pharmaceutical treatments. So for farmers and rural communities, especially in developing countries, plant-based remedies can be more accessible than imported or expensive veterinary medicines. That is why if we're here in the Philippines, especially in our college, if we are going to conduct a study regarding the ethnobotanical preparations, one of the objectives is to determine the cost analysis of using that plants as an alternative. And the fourth importance of ethnobotanical preparations is the holistic and preventative approach. Many ethnobotanical remedies are preventive in nature and aim to enhance the overall health and immunity of animals, reducing the likelihood of diseases before they occur. So these preparations may also involve like dietary supplements made from plants or using plant-based teas to improve the digestive health of livestock. And also, ethnobotanical preparation is important for the cultural significance and, of course, for the animal welfare. The ethnobotanical practices often reflect a deep cultural respect for animals and the environment as well. So in many societies, the health of animals is linked to the health of the community and the ecosystem. And thus, plant-based preparations are used not only for medicinal purposes, but also a part of rituals and cultural traditions that honor the animals. And also, this ethnobotanical preparation is very important for promoting plant-based alternatives to chemicals. That's a very important thing. Okay, so the use of ethnobotanical preparations for animals can reduce the need for synthetic chemicals such as antibiotics, hormones, and pesticides. So we all know that nowadays they're using antibiotics as the growth hormones. So we are looking for an alternative that is plant-based. So this is especially significant in the context of growing concerns about antimicrobial resistance, as well as the ethical and environmental implications of chemical-based veterinary services. So here are the examples of ethnobotanical preparations that commonly we prepared here in Tarlac Agricultural University. So we have the fermented plant juice or the FPJ. We also have the fermented fruit juice or the FFJ, and also the Oriental Herb Nutrient OHN. So I know you are familiar with this. So fermented plant juice and the fermented fruit juice are rich in microorganisms. So that strengthens the animals, especially the chicken. It also reduces the enteric diseases and improves the performance of poultry and acts as probiotics. So we use this FPJ, FFJ, and OHN as probiotics to animals, especially the livestock or the chicken. So mixing the shoots of plants and fermenting the soft parts of the plants with molasses and with the presence of microorganisms will result in a small percent of alcohol, which is responsible for extracting the juice from the young parts of the plants. So the primary elements that this FPJ and FFJ can provide are the nitrogen and some micronutrients like calcium, molybdenum, manganese, iron, and carbon. And for the OHN or the Oriental Herb Nutrient, this is a mixture of plants that have pesticide, fungicidal, and antibiotic properties, such as the garlic, the onion, the red chili peppers, and ginger, then extracted with alcohol and fermented with molasses. So why do you use this type of different herbs? So this OHN helps to enhances metabolic digestion. So it also enhances the growth. It boosts the immune system of animals, and it's also used as preventive medicine, also used as natural antibiotic and preventive solution for colds, flu, and other sickness that animals may get. So I would like to share with you the undergraduate thesis of my advisee year 2021 entitled The Growth, Performance, and Immune Response of Broiler Chicken Supplemented with Ethnobotanical Preparations. So the objectives of this research was to determine the growth performance of broiler chicken supplemented with this FPJ, FFJ, and OHN. Also to determine the effect of FPJ, FFJ, and OHN on the antibody titer against Newcastle disease of broiler chickens, and also to determine the cost analysis of supplementing this FPJ and OHN and FFJ to broiler chicken. So how? So how we prepare the FPJ, FFJ, and OHN? So for the fermentation process of fermented plant juice or the FPJ, we use the water spinach. Okay, so 1 kilogram of water spinach was chopped into 2 inches and placed into a pail. And then 1 liter of molasses was added. So why molasses? Because this molasses has yeast and bacteria that are naturally present and play a fundamental role in which induce fermentation. So the water spinach and molasses were mixed well to coat it evenly. Then the pail was covered securely and stored in a dark with cold room temperature for 7 days. Then after 7 days of fermentation, the juice was extracted and placed in water bottle containers. That's for the FPJ. So we use the water spinach as the main ingredient. For the FFJ or the fermented fruit juice, we use the banana fruit as the main ingredient of this one. So 1 kilogram of banana was chopped into 2 inches and placed in a pail. So same as the process in FPJ, 1 liter of molasses was added. Then the banana and molasses were mixed well to coat it evenly. Then the pail was covered securely and stored in a dark with cold room temperature for 7 days. And then after 7 days of fermentation, the juice was extracted and placed in water or in a container. So for the OHN, we use ginger, garlic, and onion. So 1 kilogram of ginger, garlic, onion were chopped into 2 inches and placed into pail. And 2 liters of organic vinegar were added and mixed thoroughly and then covered. Then after 12 hours, 1 liter of molasses was added, then covered securely and stored in a dark cold temperature. And then after 4 days, 2 liters of beer. So were added, then covered and stored for another 10 days. And then after 4 days, 2 liters of beer were added, then covered, stored for another 10 days. 1 year, so it in fermenting the ginger, garlic, and onion. And then the juice was extracted and placed in water bottle containers. So that's the process, the simple process of fermentation of FPJ, FFJ, and OHN. So for the supplementation of this natural probiotics, treatment one of the said research, we use only tap water as the control, so no natural probiotics given to the experimental animals. For the treatment 2, FFJ was added to the 1 liter of water of the chickens, and treatment 3, FPJ was added to the water of chickens, and for the treatment 4, OHN was added to the drinking water of chickens. And the treatments were given every Mondays, Wednesday, and Fridays for 30 days. So the experiment was done for 30 days. So this is the summary result of the said study. So this is the summary of the data gathered from 30 days of supplementing the FFJ, FPJ, and OHN to broilers chickens in terms of growth performance. So as we can see in the table, it shows that among the growth performance parameters, treatment 3 or FFG shows the best and the highest results in terms of final weight, the average daily gain, and the gain in weight. So for the initial weight, there's no significant differences. For the final weight, so again, the treatment 3 or the banana, that's the banana, so shows the highest weight gain, and it is significantly different to other treatments. As the average daily gain, feed conversion ratio, they are all comparable. For the broilers fed with banana, so according to Farman, Shal et al. In 2016, the broilers fed with banana gained more weight, because of the higher protein content of it. So, and that feeding to chickens is beneficial and have no adverse effect against its body weight. And according to Adenchi et al. In 2007, anti-nutrient that reduces its feed intake. So that's why. And also, other researchers stated that fermented supplementations or diets enhance growth performance of broiler chickens, and based on their study, also shows that increasing trend in body weight and average daily gain. So in terms of the antibody titer, so this is the average results of hemagglutination inhibition test and the initial and the final antibody titer for the Newcastle disease of broiler chickens after supplementation of the humic acid from the FFJ, FPJ, and OHN for 30 days. So the results in table shows that the experimental animals have protective antibody titer against Newcastle disease in the initial test and also for the final test. Okay, the mean of the treatment 1 and treatment 4 increase in the final hemagglutination inhibition test, while the treatment 2 and treatment 3 decrease. However, statistical analysis indicates that their values have no significant differences, and also they are protective against the disease. And the fermented supplementation enzymes helps in enhancing the health and help in the quicker growth on animals like the broiler chicken. So according to Andres in 2017, the fermentations enzymes helps in enhancing the health and help in the quicker growth on animals. Again, the live bacteria have beneficial impacts on gastrointestinal physiological activities such as digestion, nutrition, absorption, and metabolism. The probiotics are living microorganisms that are used as feed additive, or probiotics have been shown to improve immunological modulation, structural modulation, and the cytokine production, all of which protect the gut mucosal lining against infection. So that's the result of our study. Now, let's discuss the uses, the other uses, benefits, and toxicity. So of water spinach, banana, ginger, garlic, and onion. So water spinach, as commonly called here in the Philippines as kangkong. I don't know if you have this kangkong in Indonesia, and what's the local name? If you have this one, so please give me an idea. Just chat or just open your mic. So I don't know the local name of this plant in your country. So water spinach. Okay, so it's kangkong. Kangkong here in the
Yes,
Philippines.
kangkong.
Yes,
Kangkong
it's
also in
kangkong.
Indonesia. Yes.
Oh, same.
Yes, kangkong.
So
Yes.
we have the same language.
Yes. Kangkong, betul. Yes, right, kangkong.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Doctor. Okay. So what is the name? So the scientific name of this one is Epomea aquatica. So this is commonly used as animal forage in many regions. So in human, we use this in sinigang. Are you familiar with sinigang here in the Philippines? You know the dish sinigang? So we use this
No.
as one of the, oh no, you're not familiar. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we use this as one of our dishes. Also the adobo.
No, it
Do
sounds
you
not
hear
familiar.
adobo? So we have also yes, that's just like the also the kangkong adobo. So that's like, so this is for human consumption also, not only for animal forage. And however, its safety for animals, especially the chickens, depends on several factors. So although in humans safe, and And under certain conditions, it can pose a risk of toxicity or cause health issues, especially if contaminated or overfed. In general, water spinach is not inherently toxic to chickens. However, certain risks can arise from its growing conditions, the nitrate accumulation, or the excessive feeding, which may lead to toxicity or nutritional imbalances in poultry. So these are the risks and toxicity factors in poultry by supplementing water spinach. So this water spinach have this nitrate and nitrite that can be toxic to add to chickens. It can cyanosis or the bluish combs and wattles. It can cause respiratory distress in chickens. Also, it can be toxic to poultry or chickens with heavy metal and pathogen contamination. So it can cause the liver and kidney damage, immunosuppression, reduced egg production, and also this one of the contents of water spinach is the oxalate, especially it also have the saponins, which also the common contents of plants, so it can reduce protein digestibility in poultry. For other animals, so these are the risk component and the effects to different animals. So spinach contains soluble oxalates, which can interfere with calcium absorption and contribute to the formation of calcium oxalate crystals, especially in the urinary tract. So in dogs, it can cause kidney damage and repeated doses. It can also cause vomiting, diarrhea, lethargy, and muscle tremors. So it is recommended that small occasional servings are generally safe for healthy pets. So let's give water spinach to dogs, but in small amount only and occasional. So for rabbits and guinea pigs, the oxalates also in spinach can cause the bladder sludge, stones, and kidney problems when fed frequently. So feed spinach only occasionally also, just like the dogs, and in small amounts. So rotate with low oxalate greens like romaine or cilantro. So in horses, spinach is not typically part of their diet, right? So, and when fed with spinach, the oxalates could interfere with the calcium absorption, leading to nutritional secondary hyperparathyroidism if large quantities are consumed. It can cause weak bones, lameness, and poor coat quality in horses. On the other hand, spinach can be fed occasionally to hamsters and rodents. Yes, but due to oxalate content, it's best to limit the frequency and quantity to avoid urinary problems. It can cause kidney stones and bladder sludge. And so use spinach and hamsters and rodents as a treat, not a staple. So just feed smaller dose also and not frequent. Okay. In birds, just like the parrots and other birds, spinach can also pose risk due to oxalates. So it can cause calcium deficiency to birds. So this is the toxicity and estimated threshold for different animals. For dogs, it's safe to give them at least 2 tablespoons or less than tablespoon cook. It should be cooked occasionally and occasionally. And then for the rabbits and the guinea pigs, just give 15 or less than 15 grams, 1 to 2 times a week only. For horses, it's not advised to give spinach. Again, this spinach is not the normal diet of the horses, and if accidentally given as the feed, so it can cause liver damage, and bone mineral imbalances for horses. For rodents, just give a small piece occasionally, and for birds, just less than 1 teaspoon rarely only. Okay, so take note that cooking reduces oxalate content by up to 80%. So and cumulative rather than acute. So feed moderately, mix with other vegetables on greens. So give them the animals as treat, not the normal diet. So ensure it is grown in clean, uncontaminated water. And blanching or drying may reduce the nitrate and oxalate levels. And avoid feeding rotting and moldy leaves to prevent the mycotoxin exposure. So that's for the toxicity of the water spinach. For the bananas, so we have different variety of bananas. So bananas are not toxic. They can be given as nutritious treat, offering carbohydrates, mainly the sugars, potassium, vitamin B6 and C, and also the as fiber, especially in the field. So the banana fruit or the musa species generally considered safe and non-toxic to poultry and most other animals when fed in moderation. However, so certain risks or limitations may arise due to sugar content. So potential pesticide residues and feeding practices. So these are the potential concerns of banana in animals. So again, banana is not toxic to chickens, but can be given in limitations due to its sugar content. In ruminants, such as the cattle or the goats, banana fruits, even are used as energy supplements, especially in tropical countries. No toxicity reported when fresh, used appropriately. For peaches, banana digestible sugars and fiber. However, high moisture fruit should be limited to prevent loose stools. For the dogs and cats, for the dogs, bananas are not toxic and they can be a healthy snack. Okay, the high sugar content obese pets. For the birds and the rabbits, banana also is not toxic. However, can be given occasionally due to its sugar content. Uh, are you still with me? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so take note that that banana fruit is generally safe and non-toxic to poultry and most other domestic animals. The key is moderation and awareness of its sugar levels and possible pesticide residues. So make sure that the banana to be given to the animals are fresh, and the bananas can be valuable supplement or treat when included responsibly. So fun, garlic, and ginger. So these are the comparative toxicity of these herbs. So in dogs and cats, onion ingestion, especially when raw or the cooked or powdered, can cause oxidative damage to red blood cells. Lethargy and collapse. So is less than 5 grams per kilogram, and in dogs is toxic in 15%. Moreover, garlic causing oxidative stress dogs and
Terlempar keluar nggak Bang Ge?
sorry, sorry, got a unstable connection. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris.
We
Yeah,
can hear you.
sorry for that. Where's my presentation again? So let me present it again.
It's okay. Take your moment.
Uh, all right. Can you see now my screen? All right, so let me continue my lecture. So again, in dogs and cats, onions ingestion can cause oxidative damage to red blood cells, and garlic is more potent than onions in causing oxidative stress in dogs and cats. So if we are going to feed the animal or going to have an alternative medicines for dogs and cats using the onion and garlic, especially the garlic, the toxic dose is 1 to 5 gram per kilogram of raw garlic. So in poultry, some studies suggest garlic at low levels, let's say the 0.5 to 1% in feed may enhance immunity, reduce microload, and improve egg quality. Excess from that 1% in feed can still irritate the GI tract or reduce the feed intake of poultry. So for ginger, generally considered as non-toxic to dogs and cats. Large amounts may cause gastrointestinal upset, such as the nausea, gas, diarrhea, sometimes used as digestive aid or anti-nausea supplement. In livestock and poultry, ginger powder is used in feed as natural growth promoter, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory agent. It also improves conversion and gut health in poultry and pigs. So to sum it up, onion is toxic to dogs and cats, and garlic is more potent, toxic to dogs and cats than the onion. And ginger is safe, however, in small doses to prevent the gastrointestinal upset. For chickens, onion is not recommended. Garlic can be given to chicken, but be safe in low doses, and ginger is safe and beneficial to overfed, and also garlic, if given to ruminants, can risk of anemia, and garlic is safe for ruminants. For pigs, onion is not recommended, so we're not giving onions to pigs. And garlic, if accidentally given, also I'm sorry. I cannot share my screen.
I think we can help you sharing with your material. We can ask our committee to share the material that you already have sent. So it is like less burden for you.
Yeah, please. So I
Yeah,
almost
I
done.
think
I think just 2 more slides. Thank you. I think I already I almost done. Yes. Sorry for that. For the unstable connection. Yeah, thank you so much. So again, this is the summary of the toxicity of onion, garlic, and ginger. So again, ginger is safe almost for all animals, but be given in small doses. So again, the the onion is toxic to dogs and cats, and garlic is more potent, and pigs is onion is not recommended for horses as um, onion and garlic are toxic to horses, but can be given ginger in small doses only and for limitations. Next slide, please. Okay, so take note that onion and garlic are toxic to dogs, cats, and some livestock due to their oxidative effects on red blood cells. So it can cause anemia for those animals. So ginger is generally safe and even therapeutically beneficial in many species when used correctly. And careful attention to dosage and species-specific sensitivity is essential. So we have a lot of researches, studies using garlic, onion, ginger as anti-parasitic and other uses. However, take note and be careful to the dosage to be given to those animals. So next slide, please. So before I end, that's the end of the lecture. So before I end, I would like to share with you some quotes about ethnobotanical preparation. So according to Matthias Mandi, traditional knowledge about animal remedies is not folklore. It is an archive of generations of careful observation, experimentation, and ecological harmony. And according to Matthias, indigenous knowledge about medicinal plants used for animal health offers a sustainable, culturally relevant, and cost-effective approach to veterinary care. And when we observe animals seeking plants to heal themselves, we are reminded that nature is the original pharmacy, right? And animals are some of its most intuitive pharmacies. So that's the end of my lecture. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for listening. Terima kasih, everyone.
Sama-sama.
terima kasih. Thank you very much, Dr. Presto. So I think now we can come to the next section. That is the Q&A. So we would like to allow our participants or our students to ask questions. You can ask either in Bahasa Indonesia or in English. And if you can ask by writing your questions in the chat columns or by raising your hand. Yeah. So from Dr. Crystal presentation or from her lecture, we already learned so much today. Yeah, we learned about the ethnobotanical preparations or ethnoveterinary medicine. So it is a very relevant topic that we are talking and that we can talk about in our field of studies. Yeah. So I think we can take some notes or some take some notes, yeah, from the presentation. So ethnobotanical preparations is a reasonable alternative in this current veterinary medicine due to several reasons that are ongoing at the moment. For example, due to the rising of the, it is also a reasonable alternative medicine, especially in rural areas. So this is very applicable not only in Philippines but also in Indonesia. So I think it is we are facing